Hello. So I'm here at Devdays 2026 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with this team, Evan Masachek. If you don't know Evan, he's the architect of a lot of the digital quality measure transition that we've been talking about for the last several years. He was probably the primary architect of all the CQL at NCQA, um, and very involved in the ecosystem. And yesterday, on day one, he actually presented his vision on SQL, CQL to SQL conversion, and a lot of the research you did on that, which was very cool. And also today, you're talking about some agentic development that you're doing uh, at Optum
Right,
now. So,
right.
so welcome, Evan.
Thank you.
Do you want to intro about yourself? Like, what do you do on the weekends when you're not building CQL measures or CQL to SQL conversion
You have
metrics?
weekends? I'm kidding. I have two teenage sons. I spend as much time with them as I possibly can. I like to run. I like to hike. I like to play video games with my boys. I'm pretty nerdy.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Are you a big fan of fishing?
No,
No.
I don't
Okay.
like fishing. Actually, I'm anti-fishing because I don't
Okay.
like gambling, and
Okay.
fishing is a form of gambling.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, my boys they've been on the fishing kick. Like this year,
I
my older son, who's 12, he's been trying to have me find a muskie for him to catch.
mm,
So we've been driving around Western PA trying to find good places to find a muskie.
I wish I liked it because it seems really fun, and a lot of people really love it. But every time I try it, I'm just like, why am I doing this? This is
Yeah.
so boring.
Yeah.
My mind starts wandering. I lose fish because I'm not paying attention. It's just I don't have the attention span for it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's get into it. Like, your work that you're doing on the CQL to SQL, first of all, we talked about that earlier this year, and I presented at the SQL on Fire conference some of the experimentation I was doing with LLMs on that.
Yeah,
And I think the point is that you could get fairly close on simple things, but as soon as you start to get complicated, you need a real underlying math and research based
yeah. So
framework.
I think like if you have a finite set of measures, like if you have your own database, like let's say it's a I don't know a legacy claims database or something, and your goal is simply to use an LLM to maintain measures you've written in SQL on that claims database forever. Like it makes perfect sense to use an LLM. And if you take the HEDIS measures and you want to make sure that your current measures match what NCQA is putting out, it makes a lot of sense. But I have blown so many tokens and premium requests trying to get various frontier models to not only take a complicated HEDIS measure and turn it into workable SQL. But then also for NCQA, you have to pass the certification
Yeah.
test, which you're familiar with.
Right.
And it's hundreds of thousands of patients, and they explicitly try to test all the weird edge cases. So I'll give you a simple example of something that an LLM really choked on and wasted lots of tokens trying to debug itself before I had to step in. Um, in one of the HEDIS measures, there's a measurement period that you have to calculate between a child's first birthday and a second birthday, and the second birthday has to fall in 2025. So this necessarily means that the child's first birthday is in 2024, which is a leap year. And Postgres, when you try to do like date range intervals, it doesn't automatically account for leap years, so you have to drop down to days if you care about leap year math. And as a result, like the LLM simply could not figure that bug out. And it was causing some tests to fail and others to pass. So it would keep flip flopping where it would make the ones pass and then the others would fail. And it was
Yeah.
doing this just over and over and over again. So it's possible if you are a human operator who is an expert in all of this whole domain, you can do it.
Right.
But you need a healthy token pool. You need a lot of premium request quotas. You have to be willing to spend the money. So the other problem with that, of course, is then it's a one-off, and you have to repeat this process every year. And you don't want to be spending 50K in AI tokens every single year if there's a way that we could just kind of formalize how it's
Put a
done.
junior analyst on it.
Well, at Optum we have a lot of offshore staff, but even with our offshore staff, it's still an expensive proposition
Yeah.
because it's not even the staff time that matters; it's the tokens. They're
Right.
not free, and they're
And
getting more expensive. So
yeah, and even if you spend the tokens, there's not a guarantee that you're going to get. Um, so
right,
yeah, I think is there like a calculator that you would develop on based on what tasks are most jumping right into the agentic development. What tasks are really good for your,
I
Claude Code, Cairo, all of those kind of.
So in my CQL to SQL prototype project, I one of the tasks you have to do is CQL has a bunch of operators, like things like is this interval in this other interval, and does this list contain this element, and these kinds of things. And there's a lot of them. There's about 100 of them. And when you're trying to convert CQL to SQL, you have to be able to take those expressions that can appear in, for example, the where clause of a query, and you have to then be able to translate them into SQL, and that's called polyfilling. Usually it's where you take one language's operators and you create an implementation of it in another language. um, you've probably heard of the term in the context of JavaScript in the past. But in any case, I used AI to create all the polyfills because for that there is a concrete set of unit tests that you must pass,
Yeah.
and there it's a very clear expectation. So you can just put an agent on that and say, please write me the code that polyfills all of these CQL operators. Here's the spec. Here's the test you have to pass. And it took like maybe a day of processing to get all of them, but that's a perfect task for it. I reach for LLMs anytime I'm doing any kind of web development. Like when I'm writing Markdown for an IG, I will have AI write the first draft. Anytime there's a human in the loop, it's great. And we also use, as we'll talk about at Devdays, we at Optum use AI extensively to aid us in the authoring of CQL. And we do it safely there because we have humans overseeing the production
Right.
of the CQL. So it's a tool to aid development, not necessarily something to replace it.
Cool. No, thanks for those tidbits.
Yeah.
Um, where do you think the the best way to apply agentic development is in the fire world? Period. Like just stepping away from the obviously really complex SQL to SQL conversion tasks, but is it like just standing up a fire server, doing all the mapping integration? Do you feel like that's good for agentic tools, or is that also something you want to have a human in the loop on?
One of the things that I like it for is taking an implementation guide and then saying, please implement me an API client for this, right, in the language of my choice. Because IGs that are well defined, not all of them are, but most of them, when they define operations, um, they're pretty clear, and they talk about fire resources that are also well documented. So it's really not that hard for an LLM to say, yeah, sure, here's your client, here's the whole flow. For example, we're working with the CMS Access API right now that CMS put out. And that has a full list of operations for checking eligibility and enrolling and all that. And we wanted a client for it because we want to play with that API. So we just said, there you go, give me a client for it, and done. And that would have normally taken a fire dev a couple days, maybe a week at most. But with AI, it's like minutes. So I use it a lot for that. Um, the place where I think it's most dangerous is when it's making any kind of medical decision. So at Optum, we have incredibly rigorous rules for how AI is used within clinical decision support specifically. We have a lot of medical review, which is MDs doing the review and writing the prompts and that kind of thing. And that is really difficult to get right. So personally, I don't like to allow LLMs to create code for production systems without a human overseeing it.
Yeah.
Um, just as a safety precaution, and the simple reality of business, when things go wrong, someone has to get blamed. So, if there's not a human responsible for what AI produces, then it's like, who's responsible? And the answer is like no one. So,
Absolutely. So, just wrapping this up, I would say I would recommend everybody to get in and start using AI tools, because if you don't start using, you don't start finding how you can validate and get the human in the loop, and you're completely outside the system and may be impacted adversely by other competitors that are much farther ahead. So
yeah,
I say your advice would be just to get everybody access and start building it, but with proper safeguards and guardrails and a plate.
yeah. So, establishing a clear governance structure for how AI is used, who's responsible for code generated by AI that finds its way into production systems, how do you avoid people abusing those rules? That is really the key to making AI work well. So Optum has invested, I think, $1.5 billion in 2020. 2025, I think, and I think more in 2026. And all of that is moderated by a group we call the AI Review Board. So anytime you want to put anything that AI is doing in production, for example, if you're creating some kind of agent that works with clinical decision support to analyze a chart, that has to go through a very rigorous governance process. So get your governance established quickly, early, make sure everyone follows it, and then let your developers loose and say, have fun.
All right, thanks a lot, Evan.
Yeah, absolutely.